Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 196 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Colin Whiteley. And today's episode is on our dementia rate declining. And it is Saturday, the 18th of March 2023 as I record this. And I cannot believe that we're only 4 episodes away from episode 200. I really am looking forward to that's a big milestone because of what I've got planned. But I'm not going to spoil the surprise, so I won't tell you what I'm planning. But I'm so looking forward to episode 200. But so going back to today's episode, so the reason why we're doing today's episode is because this is in celebration of my brand new book launching, which is all about dementia psychology. So this is the cognitive psychology, biological psychology, and the neuroscience basis dementia. And this is just such a great topic that really does hit quite close to home. So that's why I'm really passionate about it, and that's why it's so important. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And whilst we're only going to be doing 2 news articles today, the first one is particularly interesting because of something that I'm working on. Implicit bias training has little effect on police officers' behaviour. Police departments across the United States are implementing training programs aimed at reducing racial inequality in policing. Many focus on reducing unconscious biases, a bias towards automatically perceiving a black person as posing more of a threat than a white person, for example. But do these programs actually change how officers behave? This has been hard to answer, as most training programs have not been evaluated empirically. However, a recent evaluation of a popular one-day program finds little long-term effect on police officers' behaviour. The researchers argue that the diversity training should be an integral part of the activity of a police department, rather than relegated to a brief course. So this one I think is rather interesting, and because something that I've been doing lately is that I'm working on an applied psychology book, which is going to be a lot longer than I actually thought it would be, so easily 30,000 words, and this is actually part of it. So personally I find this really fascinating, simply because we know these unconscious bias programs, they don't work, or the evidence base for them is so limited that they're basically useless. To be honest, yes, that is harsh. I'm sure people can find studies that disproves what I'm saying, but they tend to be quite small scale, and in real world settings, they just don't seem to be that great. But I do find what they're actually saying about the diversity aspect should be an integral part of any policing job. That is actually really important because, let's face it, police officers. Well, a lot of police officers that I see, at least in the UK, and from basically any police footage I've seen in America, they all tend to be white middle class men to some extent. Sometimes lower class, which is fine. But then if we apply social psychology, then you still get in groups and out groups. So people are more likely to protect white people, and they are more likely to vilify to some extent black people, which with all the police shootings in like America, that is as clear as day. So I think that this does need to be an integral part of it. Of course, the real problem is a police culture, and that's something that I talk about in my police psychology book. And if you really want to understand a police culture and how that influences a like person, then definitely check out like that book. But this is hardly a surprising finding that implicit bias training programs, they just don't work, which is a shame. And I suppose that this also creates a link to tokenism, where these police departments just want to say that they're doing something without it being actually meaningful. Tokenism is a topic that I love because I hate it. I hate the idea of like tokenism because I prefer meaningful change. But again, though, lots of organizations don't. So, really interesting. And it's also really interesting to think about this from an applied psychology perspective. So, but moving on to the last one. How should you behave if you want a new acquaintance to like you? Oh, I think this is something that like, we all want. So, open quote. When meeting other people for the first time, how should you behave if one's goal is to be liked? Close a quote. Even though that really wasn't a quote. This was the question behind a new study on young adults in Germany who got to know each other through conversations in small groups and pairs. The team finds that people who were particularly warm and friendly were well liked, whilst confident and dominance made people popular, but not necessarily liked on an individual level. And this I can understand because, of course, the best way for people to like you is that to be warm, genuine, friendly, like towards people that but when it comes to confident people, we all know people that are overconfident or they use their confidence and their dominance in a slightly nasty way. So, yes, that we want to be friends like with them, or we at least want to have their respect because that can help us in our own social like standing. Like if we're friends with this really popular person, then that rubs off well on us. But do we like them? I think there are some school examples I can personally think of where that's been the case, where you're friends with people just so that you aren't lonely, and that other people really respect you. So interesting findings and definitely food for thought. So, what do you think? So, I hope you enjoyed the psychology news section. So, let's move on to the personal update. So, we're moving on to the personal update. I've had such a good week. I've actually had an amazing week simply for basically no reason though, because the way that I tend to work is that I always like to do 4 hours of my stuff during like the day, whether this is university work and slash or writing and like business. But recently, because of meetings, lectures, working, outreach events, I've not been able to do that very much. And to be honest, it can feel like it really can make life feel really chaotic. And personally, I love routine. I so love my routines and structure. They're just amazing to me. And yes, I realize how weird that makes me self sound. But I just love routines. I've not been able to have that routine for ages. But this week, because I was in for 2 full days, is and because my meeting was actually really late in the day, I basically had 3 days of my routines and my structure, and that was amazing. I hadn't actually realised how much I'd missed that. So to be honest, that's why my week was actually great. And I guess just this is a like useful like person update for you all. If you like working a certain way and if life is really busy, you've got to make time for yourself. You've got to try and enjoy life and you've got to try and like relax. 'Cause that's what's actually kept me going like the past like few weeks there. Because yes, my routine's been destroyed And I hate not being productive. And even though I was being really productive in other areas, I wasn't productive in the areas that I wanted to be productive in. So I'm really glad that I've actually managed to actually have like productive week in my eyes, and life's just really good at the moment, thankfully. But with my dissertation due in like 3 weeks, I wouldn't say the pressure's mounting, but I really want to like get it done now. And to be honest, I've actually just thought about that. I think I would do a lessons learned post because I think that would be useful for future university students. Actually, yeah, I will definitely do that. And as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave a comment on the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi-whiteley. Or leave a comment on the Facebook post at Connor Whiteley, psychology author. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by Dementia Psychology, the biological psychology, the cognitive psychology, and neuroscience guide to dementia. So, because of like family reasons, I love dementia as a topic. It's really important to me that we understand it, we learn about it, and that people understand that it can have devastating impacts on lives. Because typically, or at least before this hit home in like my family, dementia is just a term, isn't it? Dementia, Alzheimer's, they're sort of interchangeable. No one really knows what they are in terms of like any depth level, which is why when this hit my family, it was a bit of a surprise because we all knew dementia was happening, but we never quite expected it to happen in our family. So this is why I'm really glad that I've done this book now that we've actually gone through to all that. So this book really does help you to understand the psychology behind it, the neuroscience behind it, and what dementia actually is, and what it knows. And it actually goes into a lot more of like other stuff. For example, like in a continent aspect, and even though that sounds like a sort of dirty topic, it's a lot more thoughtful and it is engaging. I promise that. But then we also talk about like health inequalities and gender inequalities. So all of these are really interesting, really important topics that I loved researching and actually writing about. So I know you're going to love this book too. So that's dementia psychology, a biological psychology, cognitive psychology, and neuroscience guide to dementia, available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get the paperback and the hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore, or local library if you request it. And I all love my books. You can buy it directly from me at payhip.com/Connor Whiteley. And buying it directly from authors is a great way to support them because they get more of the money instead of a massive chunk of it going to online retailers. So let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So we're moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about are dementia rates declining, which is certainly a very interesting idea because we always tend to I think of them as increasing over time. So let's see if there's actually any evidence behind it. And this is an extract from my dementia psychology book. So let's dive into it. Before we move on to the last two chapters of the book, I wanted us to look at a very interesting argument and some findings from a recent study on dementia rates. The main reason why I wanted us to look at this is simply because in psychology and science as a whole, we always need to look at both sides of an argument, and dementia is no different. Therefore, one of the subtle arguments throughout the book and in the dementia literature is that dementia rates will only grow and grow and grow over the next few decades, but this might not be the case after all. Yet, if it does, then all of these dementia cases will put a immense pressure on our society, medical services, and other public services, and these will only cost more and more to taxpayers. Then there's the personal costs, because families will be devastated that this is happening to their loved ones, and they will somehow have to pay for the care. As well as with a lot of Western countries like the United Kingdom and Italy having aging populations, these only encourage the rate of dementia to rise. As a result, in the article by the Alzheimer Cohort Consortium, I try saying that like 10 times faster. They suggest that the dementia case burden might not be as bad as feared, due to they present results of a comprehensive research project examining thousands of people aged over 65 between 1988 and 2015. For their study, they used 9 cohorts in the United States, Sweden, the Netherlands, United Kingdom, Iceland, and France, along with data collected from 49,200 participants. And it must be noted, 59% of the participants were female. But as you'll see in our final chapter, this is probably not a population or sample bias. It might just be a realistic look of the dementia population. Out of all of these people studied in cohort studies, 4,253 participants unfortunately developed some form of dementia by 2015, and the incidence of a new dementia diagnosis is a steady increasing with age. Although, against the expectation of the researchers, there was a 13% decrease in all-case dementia per decade since 1998, with a similar decrease found for all cases of dementia of Alzheimer's disease alone, as well as men showed a much higher decrease than women of 24% compared to 8%. Now, I know there was a lot of information in that paragraph, but it's basically saying that there was a lot of decreases in different groups, suggesting an overall decrease in dementia cases. Consequently, if these trends continue in Europe and North America over the next few decades, there could be 15 million fewer dementia cases than expected in higher income countries, possibly meaning by 2040 there could be 60 million fewer new cases of bad dementia, and that would be brilliant. Especially if we think that that is basically the UK population about now, minus like 6 million people. In addition, whilst this study seems to contradict earlier studies, thankfully these trends do seem to be fairly robust over time and across different countries. Personally, this is a great study to look at because its methodology does use a lot of my favourite research techniques, and that's actually what makes it a very powerful study, since the study uses the data from a lot of people and 6 different countries on 2 different continents. Therefore, it is a lot more difficult for critics to work on a demo study for making grand conclusions based on tiny amounts of data from a single country. Granted, to be honest, you could probably still make the weird argument, sadly. Instead, because there are so many participants from so many different countries and continents, these results suggest there is a universal behavioural trend going on, that dementia rates are decreasing in higher income countries. Of course, as psychology students and professionals, we always need to be balanced. So I will add that these results, like the researchers said, can only apply to higher income countries because no middle or lower income countries were used in the research sample. And as you'll see in the next 2 chapters, those those types of countries have their own problems. Also, I'm slightly concerned about the size of the research sample compared to the population of those countries. For example, off the top of my head, the US's population is around 350 million people, and according to Statistica.com, in 2020, 16.9% of the US's population was aged over 65, giving us around 59 million people. Therefore, even if all the 49,000 participants were from the US, this isn't a very large sample and probably representative of the overall over 65 population in each country, especially when you consider the stark regional differences like the US, which is also discussed in the chapter after this in the book. I know it's a bit picky, but there are just some limitations of the research. Possible explanations. Building upon these findings, there are no easy explanations for why this decrease seems to be happening, but it is important for us to find out why, says the lead author of the research, Albert Hoffman, as well as he acknowledges the true explanation is likely related to overall improvements in medical care over decades for older adults in higher income countries. For example, over the past few decades, there have been improvements in cardiovascular treatment like statins and other medication to control blood pressure, inflammation, and cholesterol. And as we saw from a previous chapter, maintaining a good cardiovascular health is important to protect your health and reduce your risk of dementia. In addition, over the past few decades, as the public and society as a whole have become more aware of healthy living, there has been a lot of people introducing other healthier lifestyle changes and more to help them ensure they have a healthier life. And this helps many people who might have developed dementia otherwise. On the other hand, there has been a sharp rise in diabetes and obesity in Western countries, and according to Hoffman, and I highly doubt any medical professional would disagree, these are two risk factors not helpful in curbing dementia. Moreover, over the past few decades, there has been an amazing rise in access to education and other mental stimulation to older people, like the rise in websites, online courses, and other educational content, like this podcast. For example, I would personally like to add that the rise of the internet has allowed older adults and everyone to access more information so that they can learn and keep their mind sharp, as well as the rise of podcasts like my one have allowed older people to learn on the go and just listen if reading is a bit harder than it used to be. In fact, I get a good amount of emails a year, and I'm really pleased that I'm able to help older adults learn, stay active, and hopefully reduce the risk of dementia. And the same goes for ebooks or print books, really. They are easier and cheaper to get now, so this gives older adults even more access to information. Conclusion. Overall, this mini study might be very promising, and it is truly amazing that we have such a hopeful finding from the research. But we cannot stop worrying about the dramatic rise in dementia cases and the potential impacts, because even if the predictions are not as bad as we feared, there will still be a lot of cases that will seriously strain our loved ones and our healthcare infrastructure. Then again, this does suggest that having proper healthcare and staying both mentally and physically active could help older adults live much longer and more productive lives. And that's something all of us definitely want for ourselves, our friends, and our loved ones. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and that you got something out of it. As I've said before, I love dementia psychology. I love exploring this great topic, and this is one that will not be disappearing in the future at all. So if you know someone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And if you wanted to learn more about dementia, then please check out Dementia Psychology, a biological psychology, cognitive psychology, and neuroscience guide to dementia, available in all the usual places. And you can buy it directly from me at payhips.com/Colin Whiteley. But if you didn't want to buy a book, but you still wanted to give the podcast a bit of one-time support, then you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Colin Whiteley. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwhiteley.net. So have a great day and I'll see you next time.